r/AskReddit. What do you think is the most interesting psychology phenomenon? Prospect theory. The idea that people perceive gain and loss unequally, where a loss has about twice as much impact on a person as a gain of same amount. People will take unnecessary risks to avoid loss. Like why I didn't cash in all my crypto at 20k. Tragic man. Denial. The many answers to evade the truth are very creative. Denial is rooted in perception of threat. If you manage to convey the same words in a way that doesn't make it as a threat, you'll shave off most of it. How people who hate themselves hate people who like them. How can I not think my friend is a shitty person when I look at who he hangs out with? The bystander effect. Everyone thinks they would help if something happens, but the effect says that the more people there are, the less someone is going to help. Cotted delusion, aka walking corpse syndrome, where the sufferer genuinely believes that they are dead, don't exist, or have no internal organs. Absolutely crazy. I can't imagine what it feels like walking around feeling actually, genuinely dead. I experienced this for a period of time after my dad passed away when I was young. It was terrifying and traumatic. I felt as if I was hollow inside, with no organs or vessels, just empty muscle, and was a ghost that everyone else could see. Thankfully those delusions don't plague my life anymore, but it was so dark and awful. Playing. When two animals play with each other, they both communicate aggression. They show fangs, claws, they bite, they go for the neck, etc. Everything about it should communicate danger, but they never feel endangered, even when one animal accidentally hurts another. This happens even when animals are playing with animals they have barely known for some time. It blows my mind how the right context completely transforms all the communication between animals who play. My understanding is that dogs have little pauses throughout a play fight that confirms it's just playing, and that dogs get so riled up when humans play fight because they sometimes can't tell when it's for real. If you're talking to someone intently and you hand them something, more often than not they'll take it. Doesn't matter if it's a book, a pen or an orange. No idea what the phenomenon is called or if it's even psychological, but it's made for some great pranks. In the same vein, you can look straight up towards the sky in a public location, and everyone else around you will look up, too. Similar results if you start screaming on a flight, especially when you're the pilot. When Japanese tourists go to Paris, see how not romantic it is, and have crippling panic attacks. I'm surprised to learn the Paris syndrome is apparently a real thing. Who would have thought? What the hell did I just read? Synesthesia. This happens when you experience one sensory stimulus and it triggers another. For example, you hear a splash and think of the color blue. I get this quite vividly with tastes. If I see a plastic fork, I always taste ketchup for some reason. Locus of control. Lock. Lock basically is how you view control over your own life. People either have an internal lock where they believe they have the power to control their own lives, or an external lock where you believe everything in life comes from a source other than yourself. I got fired because my boss hates me. I was late because traffic, etc. Now, what's interesting is that studies have shown people with an internal lock find greater satisfaction and success in almost every aspect of life, except one, being in a nursing home. Drives internal lock people crazy while external lock people thrive. While the nursing home bit is very fascinating, my grandmother did surprisingly well in a nursing home and I think this probably explains why. I know for a fact I would hate living in one. Why do people have favorites? Like a favorite color or a favorite flower? Or a favorite child? Damn it, Mom. What did I do to you? This is my favorite question so far. If you get yourself to be really happy and excited to see other people, they will react the same to you. It doesn't always happen the first time, but it will definitely happen next time. Time and again this has always worked fine for me. How do you do that? I do a more subdued version of this. Basically, if I want to be friends with someone, I just treat them like we've known each other for years. Most of the time it works and they treat me the same way. For me it is the unconscious mind and the fact that it accounts for the majority of our cognitive activity. I think it's interesting how we can simultaneously both know and not know things. It is also interesting, and perhaps even frightening, that we are not running the show to the extent that we think we are, at least not consciously. I like catching my unconscious mind making decisions for me. The one that I've catch the most is actually when to get up out of bed. You would think that is a decision that your conscious mind makes, but if you think about it soon after sitting up, you'll realize you just kinda did it without actually deciding to get up. It's weird. Childhood amnesia. The fact that up until a certain point you don't remember things. My first memory isn't until I was 6. My wife's is when she was 2. Hers seem to be emotionally based, so they're sparse and fleeting. Mine are like I just suddenly had a switch flipped, and there I was. You skipped your backstory. How laughter affects people. Laughter is basically the yin to stress's yang, which inspires me to make people laugh when I can, as I don't know what they're going through. Laughter increases things like dopamine, and can even help soothe physical pain sometimes. Even smiling, lifting the corners of your mouth, alone has positive effects on you, even if you force it. Man, the human brain is a weird and ducked up thing. It's like millions of years of spaghetti code in there. Deja vu. To have such a strong feeling that an instance has happened before is crazy, like you experienced it in the past, or dreamed of it. The other vus are fascinating too. Presque vu is when something is on the tip of your tongue but you can't remember it. Jamais vu is when something familiar seems unfamiliar. It's the opposite of deja vu. Don't forget dormez vu, when you think Brother John is sleeping, but he is not. I'm probably late to this thread, but I find the call of the void an interesting phenomenon. It's that feeling you get when you stand on a high place and subconsciously think I could totally jump off right now, but you don't really want to and you don't actually jump. I experienced this multiple times on my most recent trip to Europe. Dreaming. Even though everyone does it, it's amazing that our minds create virtual realities for us nightly. If you can lucid dream, it can be more entertaining than any game technology has invented. Why do our brains create nightmares? Though, it seems so masochistic for your own mind to create nightmarish scenarios that would never happen in real life, or simply relive bad memories over and over. This has always baffled me. Normally our biology avoids pain at all costs, but the brain seems to obsess over it while we dream. The placebo effect. The idea that belief in something can actually have a positive impact on the body just seems so crazy to me. Also helped me realize inversely why stress and anxiety can't take such a toll on you. Funny enough, placebo also works when you know it's placebo. Somehow, deep down, there is something in you that wants to believe despite all reasonable arguments against it. Also, nocebo is a thing. When you expect something to harm you, it will. It makes a lot of treatments complicated. On one hand, you want the patient aware of the side effects. On the other, you don't want them to generate them by the nocebo effect. We tend to hate people that have the same flaws and make the same mistakes as we do. When I drive, I hate cyclists. When I'm on my bike, I hate drivers. I hate both all the time. How I can have a surprise in my dream, like something will happen and I'll be confused about it, then someone will explain it by giving new information, and then it makes sense. But all of this is created by my own brain while I'm dreaming. How can I reveal new information to myself to explain something? This also fascinates me. My brain has created things in my dreams that baffles me to this day. But isn't my brain supposed to be me? So where are these creations coming from? Cute aggression. I always thought the link between cuteness and violent urges was ironic. Every time you see something extremely cute, something in your brain says I have to squeeze its little head off. I'm amazed at the number of people who freeze in a disastrous situation like a sinking ship. People who survive tragedies like that always report that there's not nearly the amount of panic and confusion that you'd expect. A lot of people freeze in place and simply can't move, even as the water is rising around them. Families have been split up in situations like this, where 2 of them can move, but the other 3 can't. The amount that the words we use and think in changes how we act. People who speak Spanish are less likely to blame someone for dropping something, because the language is the thing was dropped rather than you dropped the thing. Australian Aborigines have no words for left, right, etc. Instead they use north, east, south, and west. As a result, they almost always know what direction they are facing, even inside buildings with no exterior view. Deaf children in Africa using a made-up sign language had not developed signs for describing positioning, under, over, to the right of, etc. And when tested, they could not find a hidden object, even when they watched it be hidden. They couldn't tell themselves in their own minds where to look for it, and so they couldn't find it. Very interesting. The African kid thing blows my mind. It's interesting that your spoken language is also your brain's language. One of the scariest things about the book 1984 is the realization that controlling language can control thoughts. If you take away words that help people visualize things you don't want them to know, those ideas fade from possibility. Even the idea of that is terrifying. False memories. How you can implant false memories in someone over time, and they believe they are real and their reactions are based on their own reality. Edit. Thank you guys for all the amazing responses. I know the Mandela effect, but I wanted to bring up that this happens on an individual level too, not just groups of people. Also, I have not seen the movie Inceptions. I don't watch a lot of movies and don't have Netflix, Hulu, or things like that, or a TV. Edit 2. Thank you guys for showing me many more phenomenal information about memory. I had no clue. My own personal experience with this. When I was 9 years old, I was hospitalized with severe asthma that nearly killed. Blood oxygen level was 62. The entire hospital stay was such a blur because my brain was not functioning properly. Both my parents were in custody battles and tried to convince me the other parent never once stepped into my hospital room. The last time I spoke with my mother, about a decade, I am sure she would still say my father never visited me. Luckily my grandma, the voice of reason and sanity in my childhood, simply said to me, "They both visited you. They are both telling you lies." Phantom limb syndrome. The ability to feel sensations and even pain in a limb or limbs that no longer exist. Phantom limb syndrome is characterized by both non-painful and painful sensations. Non-painful sensations can be divided into the perception of movement and the perception of external sensations, exteroception, including touch, temperature, pressure, vibration, and itch. Pain sensations range from burning and shooting pains to feelings of tingling pins and needles. While phantom limb syndrome occurs only in amputees, phantom sensations may be perceived in people who have survived strokes but lost function of certain body parts or who have spinal cord injury or peripheral nerve injury. Phantom limb syndrome was first described in 1552 by French surgeon Ambroise Paré, who operated on wounded soldiers and wrote about patients who complained of pain in amputated limbs. The same syndrome was later observed and noted by French scientist, mathematician, and philosopher René Descartes, German physician Aaron Lamos, Scottish anatomist Sir Charles Bell, and American physician Silas Weir Mitchell, who tended to wounded soldiers in Philadelphia during the American Civil War. Scottish physician William Porterfield wrote a first-hand account of phantom limb syndrome in the 18th century. Following the amputation of one of his legs, he was the first person to consider sensory perception as the underlying phenomenon of the syndrome. Why are we still here? Just to suffer? Dissociative disorders. A dissociative disorder is a mental disorder that involves experiencing a disconnection and lack of continuity between thoughts, memories, surroundings, actions and identity. People with dissociative disorders escape reality in ways that are involuntary and unhealthy and cause problems with functioning in everyday life. I don't have a dissociative disorder, so to say, but the scariest symptom of my severe anxiety is dissociating. The world does not look as real. The sunlight on the earth looks superficial. Sounds are a little quieter or much louder. Houses and trees look a little different. Like it's a hyper-realistic rendering of the world that's almost spot on but not exactly. I feel like I'm dreaming and become completely numb emotionally. I'm just there, separated from everything and feel like I'm not real. I could stare straight ahead for hours in this state and not think of a single thing. It's awful and I would trade that mental response for a panic attack any day. Edit. This blew up. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger.